So I'm going to take a minute and just talk about the Bhagavad Gita. Just 700 verses, but we'll just condense it. It's a story, really 700 verses with just two characters. The main character is Arjuna, who is a 2,000, well, he's not 2,000 years old, but it was 2,000 years ago. He's the greatest warrior of the time. Greatest warrior in the land, and neurotic as hell. Filled with fear and confusion and not knowing what he should do. How many of you relate to that? Sometimes, once in a while, not knowing quite what to do. But I love it because as each and every one of us, he has a charioteer, someone driving his life. Krishna, who's the divine mentor, God incarnate. And he's there to teach Arjuna how to get on track with his life, how to step away from all that fear and confusion and doubt and worry and really embrace who he's meant to be. And as I've said every week, that quote by Joseph Campbell, the great privilege of a life is to be who you truly are. Who you truly are. To have that place to first of all know and then accept and be able to express yourself. So that's what we've done in these 3 weeks so far, this fourth week. And in the Bhagavad Gita, it gives 4 principles, 4 tools to live your full life. Easy tools. No, not easy, but simple. Anyway, the first one was look to your Dharma, which is your purpose. And each and every one of us, we know this, we teach it, is a tenet of our Science of Mind practices. We are filled with a divine spark, an inner genius. Each of us, something we're here to give. And then if we recognize that who we are, our energy and consciousness affects the world. Just as a butterfly's wing can affect a tsunami across the world, our energy and essence has an impress on the consciousness of life. So we're here for a reason and a purpose. So that's what Krishna was teaching. Look to your purpose. Bring forth that which is within you. Believe in yourself. And this part's a little tough, but we've heard it throughout the morning. Accept your successes and failures alike, because it's all the process of life. The second tool, do it fully, or just do it. Nike had it right. Do it fully. Give yourself to your Dharma. Give yourself to your purpose. And the third one, which is this week, I think so far is the hardest for me. Let go of the fruits. Not the fruits in your life, but the fruiting people, I don't mean that. But I mean, let go of the fruits of your work. Let go of the fruits of your work. Don't be attached to the outcome. That means, just as Bill, if you didn't get from that powerful reading, let go and let God be God as me. Let God be God as me. Let go. But we, as every prosperity teacher teaches, everyone, if you want prosperity in finances, if you want it in health, if you want it in relationships, if you want it in work, you have to create the space, create a vacuum. You have to let go. You've got to give stuff away, either stuff that people want or don't want. Some of that stuff you just want to bury and let go of. But we've got to create the space so we can truly express and bring forth that which is within us. And that's what this week is all about, making space. Ernest Holmes said, the gift is always given. It's always there. But it awaits our acceptance of it. It awaits our acceptance of it. So my question for you this morning, do you have the courage not to waste the gifts you've been given? Which means, there's a little addendum to that. It takes courage, risk, and owning failure and success. So if you say, yes, I'll accept my Dharma, it means you have to be willing to risk. You got to get out there on the edge. It's not enough to just stand still and stand back. Because this entire book is about the doing of life. I know It's not, we talk about human beings. It's important to be fully present in the moment because that's where your dharma and purpose resides, but we've got to be doing the work. So I've created my own few little steps to do this, if that's okay. Letting go. First of all, I want to share a quote from, it's a quote I use quite often to readjust myself. As Andrea was saying, she said she does her prayer work and her meditation and her spiritual practice is to realign herself. And that, I believe, is one of our major purposes here, to realign ourselves with spirit. So one of the mystics that I love is Meister Eckhart. Beautiful philosopher, a Catholic theologian, but very ecumenical, very encompassing of all life, very expansive. And Meister Eckhart said, the soul in each of us, the soul has two faces. One that looks at the world and the five senses, which can be very alluring and fun and juicy and awful and terrible, but it's exciting down there, right here. And the soul that gazes up at the glory of God. And I'm afraid the problem comes when we separate the two. When we remember that we are divinely human, we can bring that spiritual gaze onto the earth and see it very, very differently. When we gaze up and learn from God, when we have the space, when we've let go enough that we're not filled up with all those mind chatter and old emotions that don't work for us anymore, but when we have the space, when we bring the glory of God, and we won't read this right now, but the picture, isn't that beautiful, the little card you got today? When we bring that glory of God into us and then gaze at the earth, things change. There's a poem by Hafez, which when I saw this, I remembered that poem because I love it so much. When we learn from spirit, from oneness, from truth, from magnificence, from infinite love, Hafez said, I have learned so much from God. I've learned so much from God. I can no longer call myself a Christian, a Hindu, a Muslim, a Jew. Truth has so spoken to me that I can no longer define myself as a man or a woman or an angel, or even pure soul. Love has so befriended Hafez that it has turned me to ashes and freed me from every image or concept my mind has ever known. That's what I believe can happen when you and I gaze to spirit. And remember, I am a spiritual being having a human experience. And then we can put this human life in order and we can learn from it. We can truly balance success and failure because we understand it's all part of the process. We can understand it all. The problem comes when we separate the two. And we're looking down at the world and we start saying, okay, my dharma is, let's just say I'm to be a writer. And here's what I want. I want to get this book out. I want to get it out on this time. And we start grasping out here. We've got to get this done. We've got to do this. And what happens immediately is when we start grasping and clinging to what we want, it pulls us out. That was really wimpy. But anyway, it pulls us out of the present moment into areas where we're not going to be living our dharma. Does that make sense? Are you with me on that much? So we've got to really do things that we can let go of the clinging and the attachment to the outcome and what we want so we can just live our purpose. And there's a place where we have to be able to separate, and in the book Stephen Cope calls it tease out, grasping from what he calls our aspiration. And that's when we bring forth what is within us and it pulls us forward. How do we separate our grasping from our dharma or our aspiration? Isn't that hard sometimes to know how you get that line that you want your energy moving forward, and so you write your goals, you write all the things down that you want, you do your spiritual mind treatment, but how do we not stay attached to it? Does anybody know? Because I'm not quite sure yet. Okay, I just wondered if somebody had a good idea. I thought we might share it this morning. But one of the things for me is having a strong and clear intention. My intention is to put God first. Does it work all the time? I try. It's a readjustment. Put God first. That's my intention. So when you have a strong intention, it can realign you. With life. And then when you put God first, you can turn the woundings and the suffering and the hardship that we all have. You can turn that into light. You can make sense of it because you know there's a gift in it. I know there's people here today that have deep, deep pain of things that are happening that doesn't make sense on the human level. But when we can infuse it with a higher understanding, we can make sense of it. In The Great Work of Your Life, Stephen Cope says Beethoven, the amazing musician, is the apotheosis, the divine example of Dharma, of using his Dharma. And I'd like to share this quote before I tell you a little bit about Beethoven, which you know, I'm sure already some of it, but I'll share some too. This comes from the essential Ernest Holmes. Ernest Holmes said, "When things look the worst, it's the time to get to work." How easy is that? But anyway, when things look the worst, it's the best time to get to work and the most satisfying time. The person who can throw himself with complete abandon into the limitless sea of receptivity. Use me. Throw yourself into the limitless sea of receptivity. Use me, God. Let God be God as me. Use me. When we can throw ourselves into that limitless sea of receptivity, listen to this part, having cut loose from all apparent moorings, all of the attachments of how things should be, would be, could be, aren't, letting go of that. Letting go, creating the space for that newness, for something wonderful to be born out of this. This is the one who will always receive the greatest gift and the greatest reward. So let me tell you a little bit about Beethoven. I'm sure you know a little bit about him, but he was a very emotionally wounded and profoundly neurotic man. He was tortured by inner conflicts his entire life. He had a very, very difficult German upbringing, and he was also tortured by his own behavior. And he was one of the greatest and most radical composers of all time, a tormented genius who went deaf. It said later in his life, but he started going deaf at 28 and had complete deafness not long after that. And he never heard some of his he never heard his final works, which were some of his greatest. Yet, Beethoven lay on his deathbed, and he was a fulfilled man. Not a happy man, but a fulfilled man. He had known his Dharma, his music, so completely, and he'd given himself to his music with abandon, and he had made a difference in the world. In several places in his journals, he wrote, "I would have killed myself, but I had work to do." He also wrote to a friend midway through his life, "Before my departure to the Elysian fields, I must leave behind me what the eternal Spirit has infused into my soul and bids me to complete." When Beethoven died, and that was on March 26, 1827, at the age of 56, he had a public funeral, and 20,000 people attended. Do you get what I'm talking about? This may be hard sometimes. Nobody said it was going to be easy, but we have work to do. We've got things to give this world because this world needs some help. Would you agree? The world needs a little bit of help right now, so do we. But we're here because we can use the tools we get. The world needs help, and we've been called to be here right at this time to do it. So no matter how painful or difficult it seems sometimes, it's important to know we are never, ever, ever alone. And right now, you and I have everything we need to create a life. And let me tell you something though, not the way we think it should look, because I got to tell you that one of the other tools is we cannot take responsibility for how things look out there. No responsibility for that part. Our responsibility is to do the work. What's our responsibility? Do the work. And we are not to be attached to, and we take no for how it looks out there. We don't know. Some of the things people do, their greatest successes, happen after they're gone. We can take no responsibility. Ernest Holmes teaches every practitioner, every single practitioner, we take no responsibility for the outcome. Because there's two things that have to do with the outcome. There's zillions of things that have to do with the outcome, but we can't take responsibility for it. Jesus was telling a story, it's in Matthew 9:27, and he said that he was... as Jesus went on from there, two blind men followed him, crying loudly, "Have mercy on us, Son of David." When he entered the house, the blind men came to him, and Jesus said to them, "Do you believe that I am able to do this?" Do you believe it? Because our faith in ourselves, remember I said, we must believe in ourselves. Even if we're going to be doing this, we must believe in ourselves, whatever we're doing. "Do you believe that I am able to do this?" They said to him, "Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord, we do." And he touched their eyes with his hands, removed his hands, and they could see. But then he said to them, he sternly ordered them, "See that no one knows of this." Because Jesus knew he wasn't doing the work. It was God within him, the Father within him that doeth the work. He knew that. Don't go out and tell him I did this. I'm just using the power to do the work. Don't tell them. They did anyway. But whatever, we do that. Stephen Hawking, that amazing, unbelievable, life-changing physicist, says no one undertakes research in physics with the intention of winning a prize. No true physicist. It is in the joy of discovering something no one knew before. The joy of discovering something no one knew before. I might add, I just enjoy discovering something I didn't know before. I'm not quite at that level of Stephen Hawking, so I just like to discover something new in me. Because if I discover something new in me, it too can be contagious. So today, when we leave, let go, let God. We're here to be reminded to just let go of our attachment to the things out there, to bring forth that which is within us, to take no responsibility for the outcome. Now, I want to tell you something. As practitioners and ministers, number one, when When our practitioners and ministers and and practitioner interns get up here, and ministerial interns, we are trained to establish ourselves in the power and presence of God. Not just for ourselves. Of course, it's for ourselves. But we are trained to do that because even if it's like these blind guys, they couldn't trust the power themselves. They didn't know how to do that, but they could trust Jesus. And when you come up here for a prayer treatment, it's because you trust the practitioners. Faith. We establish the faith in ourselves so it can be shared. And the good news is we're all practitioners and ministers. We're all practicing. Now, some of you maybe need to change some of your practices, but we're all practicing and teaching something in the world. So we need to adjust what we practice and teach. So I'm just going to share one last thing with you. A dear friend of mine shared something. We were talking about spiritual mind treatment and the 5 steps of treatment, going over that and talking about it, loving it. And he said, you know what? I'm going to add something. There's a 6th step. I said, oh, okay. And I do the work. We can pray and pray and pray, but if we're not willing to take the tenets of science of mind, change your thinking, change your life. Who's going to do the change? And there's a power greater than we are for us to use. Who's going to use it? We are. We've got to do the work. So right now I want you to just join me as we close in prayer today and put your feet on the floor, untangle all those body parts, be open and receptive, not only untangle them to receive, but let go. Let go right now. Trust the process. Be supported by the chair. Feel right now that we are filled. And even just in this room, even though it's everywhere, present, eternal, infinite, everywhere, always, that this room is filled with the power and presence of Spirit right now, right here in this moment. We feel that presence, the creative energy, the impulse of life right here before us. It's as close as our breath. It surrounds us. It surrounds us in the air. It's in, through, and as us right now. And as we recognize our oneness with this infinite creative spirit that we call life, that we call love, that we call it creative potential, that we call it Dharma, we allow right now to feel that, to own it, and know we have everything we need in this moment to bring forth the goodness, the truth that is within us now, to live a life that makes a difference. We have that power in us in this moment. We're able to see with the eyes of Spirit as we let go of the attachment, the old emotional woundings, the old thought patterns that no longer fit, and we download and receive the light and love of Spirit that guides and directs us to see our life as an unfolding pattern of love, that we see ourselves fully alive and ready to take the risk and have the courage to simply do our part, to live our gift, to leave that impress in the world. And know that wherever we go, that light of Spirit is available. The light of God is there right now for each and every one of us. We are never alone. And as we feel activated in this truth and knowing, we allow ourselves right now to breathe it in and release it to the law of mind in this moment. To release it, to let it go, and trust the process.